Hello, everyone. Happy Thursday. It is, I believe it's like April's flying by. It's so wild that, the older we get, the more time flies. And at the same time, it's just kind of the nature of time when we're doing things that we love. This time seems to fly by. When we do things that are like extremely boring, like waiting in line at the DMV. There's times when time just is like molasses, and it doesn't work out for us so well when we start to get fidgety and things like that. So time is not what we are talking about today on the Culture Playground Masterclass. We're actually talking about wisdom. And as always, I'm super excited about this topic. It is really an opportunity for us to dive into our own inner wisdom and what that means. And it's really about starting to own our inner superpowers, right? Because that's what our wisdom is. And hi, Shiva. And so just being able to dive in and go, what is wisdom? Like, how does that show up? How do we own our own inner wisdom? And then how do we ignite that in those around us? Because at the end of the day, that's kind of what we're doing here in the world of education and being students and being teachers in this world, is that we want to ignite that inner genius in all humans around us, because then we get the best out of them. And then we tend to feel the best about ourselves when we can inspire and ignite that inner genius in people around us and see those light bulbs going off, as well as within ourselves. So Shiva, let's kick it off with, what does it feel like when a light bulb goes off inside of you as an educator?
Oh, sorry, I had to unmute.
Good.
So, I mean, it just, I don't think I have the words to kind of articulate the actual feeling, when the light bulb goes off, but I know that it's almost like a relief for me when it does happen, because there's already so many questions or so many things that I have running around in my head about how I can do a better job. So when it does happen, it's like, oh, yes, finally. Okay, here's the solution. And then let's just go ahead and apply it.
Yeah, that's so true, right? It's almost like a relief and an elation all at the same time. And anyone who's watching Brene Brown's series on HBO Max, she's diving into all of I think she said like 87 different words to describe different emotions. So sometimes when we can't find the word, it's because there might be like 5 that can kind of touch on it, and we don't know which one to really dive into. But yeah, it's that. No, I'm like, it's a positive feeling, right? It lights us up. It feels good, and so when we see that in our students and in those that we serve, it's the same thing, right? But really, it all comes down to, like, when you don't have a culture that fosters that inner wisdom, even when schools and learning environments of all types say that we want you to learn something and that's what we're here for, but what they're measuring is not necessarily that the wisdom, like the light bulbness, the journey of learning. They're not measuring that. They're measuring one moment in time, or they're so focused on data and test scores that they're missing the whole human emotion that leads to then more learning, right? Which is kind of hard to capture. It's kind of hard to measure those micro moments of wisdom happening. But when it's not there. When you're in an environment that is not actually there for the learning of it. I'm sure you've walked into classrooms, your time as an instructional coach and even with colleagues along the way, where it's like, this doesn't feel like we're igniting the inner genius or seeking wisdom either together or individually. It just doesn't feel, it feels like we're doing rote memorization, or we're doing, like, what are some of the other things that you would see that are not a culture of wisdom?
So usually things that I would see that are not a culture of wisdom is just teachers who are going against their natural instincts and like their intuition, right? Because for me, wisdom is not just having this knowledge of what to do, but it's also doing it, right? So I think as educators, we have everything. I mean, just as people, right? As conscious people, we have everything it is that we need inside of us, but we're not doing it.
Right.
So in a classroom, that looks like a teacher who's not, pushing their own envelope. They're not doing anything new. Like you said, rote memorization. They're kind of falling back on what worked 2 years ago. And here's the thing for all of us that are in the field, especially if you're secondary, sometimes your second period isn't even the same as your fourth period class. So it's that ability to adapt and adjust and know that, okay, what worked last semester or what worked last year isn't going to work now. But when that culture of wisdom isn't there, it's like you don't follow through. Mm-hmm. So that's a lot of what I've seen. And then to follow up with that, what I see in the students, Sandy, is a lot of disengagement. Oh. You start to see, behavior management issues, right? Because if we're not igniting that in your inner genius of a child, they're going to find something to do. Mm-hmm. And that's just what happens.
Right. And it becomes this environment that you want to learn in, right? You want to actually be a part of, you want to, so that's what engagement is, right? Xander, absolutely right. Wisdom to do is the key. Wisdom to know is not enough, right? It's how are we actually putting it into practice and showing up? So when we talk about culture in general, culture is the collective capacity of who every individual shows up as. So even in the microcosms of small group work, they're creating little mini cultures. And so in that small group work, what are you seeing emerge? Are they fostering and igniting the inner genius in each other and really seeing, hearing, and valuing the unique perspective that each of them brings to the table? Or are you seeing one dominate and the others unintentionally diminished, right? Because, and I say unintentionally, because it's about really trusting that in us as humans, the vast majority of us are not trying to hurt anyone else or be evil or, conspire against someone, right? That's not who we show up as the majority. And are there the outliers? Yes, but we're not talking about the outliers. We're talking about the majority, because when we look at really creating these environments where it is safe to actually show your inner wisdom and your inner gift, because so often in our world, right? It's not even just in the system of education. In whatever environment we're raised in, we're programmed to believe that a certain type of wisdom is where the value is, versus seeing the uniqueness of each individual and that their gifts, that's what they get to bring to the table. That is what they can only bring to the table in this world. And so we really didn't set up the system of education for that, because we didn't have that wisdom at that point in time. So it's not that the system of education was set up for us to fail. It was just set up for a different purpose. And so evolving the purpose, there are so many educators that are doing that in their classrooms. And at the same time, they're doing it in a way where they're fighting against a system that doesn't support that. And so it's really up to all of us to get into this new rhythm and connect with each other and lock arms and go, I see you, I got you. That's brilliant when you do that, even if that's not part of what you're being measured on or graded on or evaluated on. Mm-hmm. We still want to be seen, heard, and valued. So when I want to talk about talent dynamics a little bit and kind of dive into that just as an overarching, and those of you that are part of the Genius Group community with the CEO, Roger Hamilton, you'll know this, and this will be something that's kind of a refresher for you. The rest of you, you may have gone through this with me. It may be something that you're still curious about. It may be something where you're like, I have no idea what she's talking about. And this will be like a 2.5 second version of all of the depth of wisdom that's in it. but I want to share it just from kind of a high level in terms of how do we seek first to find what is that inner wisdom in each individual in our lives, right? Not even just in our students, but in our families, in our partnerships, in our relationships. Because when we first see each other through that lens of what our superpowers are, now we want to get more of that. Because as soon as you see that genius in someone and you celebrate them for it and you see them light up, it gives you a payoff in return, right? To go, oh my gosh, I gave them a gift of telling you how brilliant you are, and it feels good to share that, right? So when we create cultures of wisdom by noticing each other's superpower first before we're irritated by something that happened, then we can actually come at it from a place of kindness and mutual respect and adoration, and the fact that mistakes are human and normal. Because Shiva, if you want to chime in on this while I kind of pull up the report on what's it like to make mistakes when you do have a culture of wisdom, right? Yeah. Versus when you don't. What's it like to make mistakes on either side? And I'll pull this up.
Well, sure. I mean, I think that if you are, you're operating within a culture of wisdom, when you make mistakes, I think that guilty period that a lot of us, have just as, again, conscious adults and educators, that's minimized greatly, right? Yeah. We're not going to spend so much time beating ourselves up. We're going to recognize what the mistake is and take the steps to minimize that in the future. And when you're in that kind of culture, it's like, okay, so this is what happened. How do we make it better? And then we move on. But if you're not in a culture of wisdom, it's like the fear is compounded, because for that mistake, people are going to hang on that mistake and you're never going to be able to get away from it or right. Let it go.
Right.
And that's been my personal experience, at least.
And it happens so frequently. And so when we can connect the fact that mistakes are part of learning, right? And it's you're learning one way not to do it, right? The Einstein quote. And it's, is that Einstein? I may have said that wrong. I'm terrible at quotes. Like you're literally learning one way not to do it. And we're going to fail more times in life at things than we come to realize what our vision was. But along the way, we're going to have this learning journey where we're going to learn ways that don't work. So then that gives us more information to make our next decision. We can't make that decision without all of the information from these micro decisions along the way. We need more information in order to get to the ultimate vision of what we're trying to achieve. And sometimes that happens in micro moments, and sometimes that happens over a lifetime, right? And anywhere in between. And if we're not creating this culture where we're seeking that wisdom and to understand, right? Stephen Covey's work, seek first to understand, lead with curiosity, from Brene Brown's work, and lean into that vulnerability of being open to quote unquote failure, is to actually celebrate that that's part of not knowing, right? And then doing something about it, whether it's leveraging a person or a system or whatever it is, to then get to that next step. So when we break this down and we look at, I'm actually going to share with you, it's my son's profile report. So I'll go through a little bit in detail of his, but it's a good opportunity to kind of look at the bigger picture of talent dynamics. And so this is Roger Hamilton's work within the Genius Group. And it is a psychometric assessment. There are several of them out there. The reason that I like this one is because of the dynamic usability of it in all facets of life, in all facets of business, in all facets of school, effective communication, project lifecycle. It is connected to how everything in the world grows and flows. And there is a depth of wisdom within this. It's rooted in the I Ching, rooted in Carl Jung's work. So there's, again, I can't even, there's not enough time for me to go into the depth of where this comes from, but definitely if you're interested in more information or about your specific profile, definitely send me a message. And I'm happy to go through some wisdom for you individually. But I want to point out first, the frequencies. And so the words dynamo, blaze, tempo, and steel are the frequencies. So when we talk about a frequency, we often think of like a radio frequency or energy. And what that is what everything is made up of. And we all have a certain vibration of energy that comes most natural to us. And there are different seasons for different energies, right? If we think about what it feels like in springtime, what it feels like in summertime, what it feels like in autumn or fall, what it feels like in winter, they all have a different energy to them. And all of them, everything in nature grows and flows with the seasons. You know, farmers have been following that for decades, generations, right? So when we think about how we as humans are wired within a percentage of these frequencies, it then gives us the information to know what comes easiest to us and what lights us up and what gives us the energy to actually do more versus energy that drains us because it feels like hard work because it's not necessarily our dominant frequency. So that's really where I like to start on this. And then it goes into the 8 profiles, which are the unique percentages of each frequency and a lot more wisdom and details. But for today, because we only have a few minutes left, I just want to focus on the frequencies. So the dynamo frequency is that big picture, head in the clouds, great at starting things, really thrive with significance and freedom. They are a visual type of learner. Again, that innovative, intuitive mindset, that spring energy, right? It's like a new thing. And dynamo dominant frequency tends to have lots of ideas all the time and can sometimes get lost in their ideas and lose sense of timing. So then the tempo frequency at the bottom of this square is more of that earth energy, that fall, starting to slow down, really sensory, all about timing, really thrive with connection and harmony, more of a kinesthetic learner. And so when we think about the difference between dynamo and tempo, dynamo great at starting things, tempo is going to be better at actually getting into the weeds of the details and knowing how long things are actually going to take. So when we're communicating with each other, excuse me, I've got that frog in my throat today. So the dynamo, it's going to be like, oh, I can see it all and it's beautiful. And tempo is going to be like, yeah, but I can feel how long it's actually going to take. And dynamo is going to go, oh, that'll take 5 minutes because I can see it so clearly. Tempo is going to go, that's going to take 5 hours. And 99.9% of the time, tempo's right, because their intuition and their natural inner genius is more grounded, right, in that sensory timing intuition. Then we have the blaze dominant frequency, which is more summer energy, all about people, all about magnifying things. They tend to have more extroverted characteristics. Being around people energizes them. They thrive with communication and variety. They're going to be more of an auditory learner. And so blaze dominant frequency can be on all day and then want to go out at night and hang out with their friends and need to talk to more people and do all the things all about people. And then we have the steel dominant frequency, which is more that winter energy. They are going to gain energy from more introverted based activities, the data, the systems, the research, in order to multiply things because they're really good at the how and they're more of an analytical learner. They're going to thrive with certainty and control. So when we think about these 4 dominant frequencies, they're 4 very different types of humans. I'm sure as I'm describing them, you're picturing different people in your mind that kind of fit these characteristics. And again, this is one layer to who we are as humans. This is not, there's the layer of how we were raised, our experiences, our beliefs, our core values, that all go into our personality, right? This is more psychometric of actually what creates our success in life. And as we overlay different profiles, we can get to how do we get teams in flow to create team rhythm and team success and overall culture rhythm in organizations and schools, to actually have everyone participate and have this as a common language. It becomes a foundational component for seeking wisdom in each other. And so when we think about how we communicate and when someone who is a blaze dominant frequency and that summer energy and they come into a room where you're having a very analytical systems-based conversation, what's that going to feel like, right? Shiva, have you ever had that happen where you're in like a systems-based analytical conversation and someone with all kinds of blaze energy comes into the room? What happens?
It's just overwhelming for me because that is totally not me. You know, I'm an accumulator. So it's like, what is going on?
Right.
I mean, but you know, I mean, and it's fine. But yes, it's just a little overwhelming sometimes when it's, you know, so much.
Yeah, it is. And vice versa. If you've got a room full of blaze energy and they're talking about people and how do we get this party started and then you have someone come in who's more analytical and more introverted by nature, they're going to feel like a fish out of water, right? And it's all about how we communicate with one another and celebrate and actually adapt our energy a little bit to welcome them and invite them into the space. Or if you're having a meeting that is a dynamo meeting, it's all about brainstorming, all about innovation, and you bring in the details, the systems and the timing of it too soon before you've fleshed out all the ideas, then all the ideas are gonna die before they actually even become a full-fledged idea, not because they want to be dream killers. It's just because their brains are naturally hardwired for iceberg ahead, right? For that risk management, to make sure that we don't fall off the cliff and that the dreams are actually realized. So being very intentional when you set the tone for a conversation to be like, we're going to be in innovation space, or we're going to be in dreaming space, or we're going to call it whatever you want, but be specific about it so that you can set up your teams for success so that their wisdom has a role to play. So, I mean, I can go into this in so much detail, but when you get your profile report, if you choose to do this, you're going to see what your percentages of frequencies are, and you're going to get a little visual of kind of how you individually thrive and what creates success in your life. So all of that is like a, like I said, 2.5 second version of the depth that we go into with that. And in a lot of the work that we do in school culture transformation and really elevating the consciousness of educators is diving into the unique profile of not only the individuals, but the teams and then the organizations to help everyone thrive and really get into that rhythm with one another. I'm a creator profile. Sheba's an accumulator profile. And all the time when I'm communicating with Sheba and really looking for ways for us to connect with one another, I know that she's going to be so much better at when and how, because she's an accumulator. She's on the corner between tempo and steel. So I'm not going to necessarily ask her what type questions, like dreaming type questions. I'm going to, or if I am, I'm going to give her more time to process that. But if I ask her timing questions like, Sheba, how long do you think that it'll take for this? Or when do you think is the right time to do this? It's going to come to her super intuitively. And then I don't have to burn my energy. As a creator profile, I'm going to think about all the different options of what could happen in that. And I'm going to spend 5 hours trying to come up with when or how, when I can just ask Sheba and it just, right? And then she just tells me, and I'm like, oh, that's such a relief. And it goes back to that relief when you know you're in a culture of wisdom to go, oh, I don't have to do it all on my own. And I can be seen, heard, and valued for the unique, amazing human that I am. And I can see, hear, and value you for the unique, amazing human that you are. And so there's so much power in creating cultures of wisdom. And it's often overlooked because we're trying to play whack-a-mole with all the other symptoms that are coming at us. And honestly, it is as important, next to important, as safety, right? Because if we're not igniting and fostering the inner genius in those around us, it means we're usually accidentally diminishing them, right? Which is not what any of us want. And unfortunately, it's a lot of what we're seeing in the world today. And we all know it doesn't feel good. So Sheba, if you could kind of share like a parting word of wisdom with pun intended, with everyone who's listening and watching around really the power of this, what would you share?
Just the power of having a culture of wisdom, or just no. So, I mean, I think if I just wanted to share anything, especially with all of my friends out there who are educators, it's, we know what to do, right? We have to trust ourselves when we're in our classrooms or in our offices. Let's do what we know, right, is the best to do, you know, with children in mind. and then let's just apply it. And I think once we start doing more of that, we're going to be okay. It's going to be fine.
Yeah, we got this, and we've got each other. And that's really what I want you all to hear is we're in this together. We are creating the conscious educator community to know that this is our safe place to be in this together, because it's all about all of us together. And the more we celebrate and ignite the inner genius in each other, the easier it is to do it with that ripple of impact to all of those around us. So Shiva, thank you as always for being here and showing up in the middle of your day. I wish you a beautiful rest of your day with your students. And to the rest of you, I love you. I adore you. Thank you for being a part of this community. And we'll see you next week. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.